Hi everyone, this is Mrs. Varellen. I am going to try Screencastify for the first time and see how this works for us. I'll go over our next set of notes, which is on the Cold War, and you guys can follow along and listen to my voice because you've missed it so much on the PowerPoint that you'll access on Google Classroom. I tried doing it in the PowerPoint like I usually do, and I saw that you guys could not access the sound. So getting started on there. The next section we're going to talk about is the Cold War. And it went a little fast. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the Alta Conference, and I talked a little bit about the Alta Conference before. This was the conference that happened at the end of World War II when the Allies were trying to figure out what to do with Germany, and so they decided to break Germany up into 4 different zones, which we talked about. You had the 3 zones, which were French, British, and the United States, and then you had the Soviet Union zone, which ended up becoming East Germany. Okay, so here's a picture of it. You guys can see the red portion is the Soviet Union. The southeastern portion is the United States. In blue, southwest was France, and the top part was Britain. And this is how they divided up Germany. If you guys notice, the green, blue, and orange portions end up becoming what is known as West Germany, and the red portion became East Germany. Now, if you look in the red portion, Berlin, which is the capital of Germany, is all in white. And there was a problem because the Allies said if, the Soviets were controlling that portion, they were controlling the capital, and we didn't want that to happen. So they decided not only to have Berlin, which is all encased in the Soviet Union's portion, they decided to split Berlin in half. And so that's where the Berlin Wall and everything else comes from. So if you guys go on to the next slide here, you'll see that you have West Berlin and East Berlin, and the red dotted line that's there is where the Berlin Wall was located, separating the 2 parts. So the west portion of Berlin was completely surrounded by Soviet Union territory too, and that becomes an issue later on when they try to stop us from getting anything in there. The United Nations is something that came about after the end of World War II. This was the largest peacekeeping organization that we have. We still have it today. Remember, we talked about the League of Nations and how it did not become successful after World War I. This is their answer to that. And obviously it's successful for the fact that it's still around today. Now, the Potsdam Conference, this is what happened. I have this timeline here on the side you guys can see. On May of 1945, we talked about this already, where Germany fell. And then you have August, when the dropping of the bombs happened in Japan. The Potsdam Conference happens right in the middle in July of 1945. This is when President Truman met with Stalin, and they kind of were going back and forth with what to do with Europe after the war. And we started to realize right here that there was going to be a big difference in how we both wanted things to happen. And you guys can kind of see this on the next viewpoint. Americans, we were fighting for democracy. We wanted people to be able to elect their leaders and decide things. Where the Soviets, they had that communist country where they felt like they should control everything. And so they were really curious about Poland. Poland was destroyed, as we know, because Germany took it over. And so they wanted to know what was going to happen with Poland. They wanted Poland to become a communist nation. We wanted it to be a democracy. And so Poland actually became a satellite nation of the Soviet Union, meaning that they kind of controlled it after the war, even though we weren't very happy about it. And you can see the increasing hostility. Like I said, I have these nations. The Soviets wanted all these surrounding nations like Czechoslovakia, Bulgaria, Albania to become satellite nations. And they forced that red section of the map that you guys saw in East Germany to also become communist. We did not like that, and so Prime Minister Winston Churchill decided that he was going to discuss this, and he talked about a Iron Curtain. And that term, I always talk about when I was talking in class about when you visualize what an Iron Curtain is, you kind of think of like a metal wall, and that's virtually what he was saying. They didn't create a wall, but he was saying that we needed to control what's happening in Europe. So we had to basically prevent any further communist infiltration into Western Europe. And so he said we needed to rule it with an iron fist and have an Iron Curtain that separates it. And this is where the Cold War term on the bottom here comes from, where you have this hostility, but you don't actually have fighting. So if you look at the map I have here, the red section is Cold War section, or the red and blue sections are both from the Cold War. Red section is the Soviet territory that they took over, and the blue section is obviously the Allies like America, France, Great Britain. Neither of us wanted to get involved in another war. We just finished a war. So that's the biggest thing. Even though we were upset with them, we weren't going to go to war over it. And so that's what, started this whole situation. So the best way for us to do that, we decided, was something called containment. We wanted to contain the portion